Welcome to our first NAC's Ask Me Anything of the fall 2023 semester. My name is Burcin Becerik-Gerber. I'm an NAC member and professor and department chair at the Astani Department of Civil and Environmental Engineering at the University of Southern California. And my co-moderator is Professor Susan Bogus. Susan is the interim chair and AGC endowed chair professor of construction engineering and management at the University of New Mexico. The theme of our AMAs this semester is the implementation of new technology in design and construction. And this is a great opportunity to ask questions about the use of AI, robotics, modularization, digital twins, and other technologies being employed, and also to get career advice from our very successful professionals. So the National Academy of Construction was established in 1999 to recognize our industry leaders. An important purpose of the Academy is to share the collective knowledge and experience of our members to improve the industry. We have established the NAC's AMA to help transfer knowledge of our members to next generation of construction leaders with these webinars, providing a means to link past, present participants in the construction industry. Our AMA sponsors this year are the University of Florida Rinker School of Construction, Arizona State University Del Webb School of Construction, and the University of Colorado at Boulder Construction Engineering and Management. So our format is very simple. Our speakers will make a short presentation about a topic and their perspectives on the industry, followed by time to answer your questions. If you haven't already, please email your questions to nacama@austin.utexas.edu, and Sandy will put that email address in our chat. One student will win a $500 scholarship, which will be announced at the end of this event. So it's my great pleasure to welcome Professor Burcu Akinci, who is the Paul Christiano Professor of Civil and Environmental Engineering at Carnegie Mellon University. She earned a bachelor's degree in civil engineering from Middle Eastern Technical University and an MBA from Bill Kent University, and master's and PhD degrees in civil and environmental engineering from Stanford University. She has made significant contributions in using building information modeling and sensing technologies to increase operational efficiency and support decision-making in construction and facility and infrastructure management. She holds 1 patent and 2 provisional patents, and she also co-founded Lean FM, a startup that develops and demonstrates the feasibility of using big data analytics and machine learning to transform facilities operations and maintenance decisions. She is the recipient of 2020 Computing in Civil Engineering Award from the American Society of Civil Engineers. I'll stop there and I'll have Burcu introduce herself and her research, and then I will continue with your questions.
Awesome. Thanks so much, Burcin, for that nice introduction, and thanks, Burcin, Susan, and National Academy of Construction for inviting me to be part of this session. I'll give a little bit background on me, on my journey and how I ended up where I am, and why I'm really passionate about, AI, digital twins, or technology that's applied to the built environment. I don't have a formal presentation, but would love to have, lots of questions from you and try to answer them as much as I can. As Burcu mentioned, I did my bachelor's in civil and environmental engineering. I'm sorry, it's only civil engineering in Turkey, civil engineering at Middle East Technical University. And before that, I always start by saying that I come from a family of civil engineers. So I'm a 3rd generation civil engineer. Both my parents were civil engineers, and then my granddad was a civil engineer. My brother is a civil engineer who's married to an environmental engineer. I'm married to a civil engineer, and none of my kids are civil and environmental engineers, but that's okay, they're still engineers. I accidentally hit the space button. The reason that I say that is the background is the fact that I do feel very passionately about our domain and what we can bring to the world, right? So to me, technology is always secondary. So I do have that bias. I was born and raised in this discipline. I kind of heard everything about civil engineering in the dinner conversations when I was young. So I do kind of tell my bias from the get-go. But I also do truly think that we're in as civil engineers, we're in a really interesting place to incorporate the right technology and make advancements in the technology while we're advancing our fields and making a sustained positive impact to the world. My journey is from bachelor's and MBA. I did my master's and PhD at Stanford and then joined Carnegie Mellon. When I was at Stanford, there was this talk about, digital models, building information models. At that time, it was called product models. I didn't know anything about computing when I started there. I barely knew programming. So did a bunch of courses to kind of feel comfortable in there, and totally fall in love with this notion of virtual models, virtual construction, and being able to do prototyping in a virtual world before we go and do things in the real world, and use that as an opportunity to proactively prevent issues, quality issues, time-space conflict issues, which was my PhD thesis on, productivity issues, etc. After joining Carnegie Mellon, I saw the other side of the coin. So virtual models are great, but if you just leave things in the virtual world, you're not really incorporating what's happening in the real world. So started wholly fall in love. My other love was sensing and data acquisition and really capturing what's in the real world to improve the virtual world, and then using the virtual world as a context to understand the sensing data and make sense of it. So I have been working in this nexus of, the virtual models and sensing and data acquisition and integration of those to be able to answer some of the, challenging questions that we might have in our industry. Having said that, though that's my expertise, I'm always driven by the problem. So I typically start my research as an observation that I see either in facility operations or construction side, and then sorry, my dog is barking, and then it translates into the technology afterwards. So even though I have that expertise, to me, technology always comes secondary. So then from that on, so I've been working in that space, and with that, we started going through several movements in AI. AI is not something new. When I started at Stanford, 1990s, it was all about rule-based systems and expert systems. That was AI, right? So capturing the knowledge. So it was a very knowledge-driven approach to AI. We all know what's wrong with all of that, right? Those rules are brittle. You can't expand them. So I kind of wrote through that version of AI, and then came data, and we have all sorts of sensing and data in the whole wide world. So this whole machine learning based approach started. Lots of data, statistical analysis. That's great, right? So try to kind of learn the knowledge from the data. And that was great too, but it also has limitations. It has very limited predictive capabilities, and it only works on what it learns, and you can't really expand that. In certain ways, that's also brittle. So recently meaning a few years back, CS folks, computer science folks, also started discovering the need to merge these two approaches in some way, right? So bringing in the domain models, which is, I would call like digital twins, that comes both with information models as well as simulation models, bringing also these data-driven machine learning approaches and combining those two as a way to come up with better predictive models, right? And that has been my research. And over the last few years, really focusing on what this digital twin might look like, how can we leverage both the information model aspect of it as well as the simulation aspect of it, and to get into a more predictive mode of things. Of course, last year, we also had, to me, another round of revolution around generative AI, and which changed how we see the AI or how we interact with the AI and how easily accessible and scalable the AI is. And I had some statistics to share, and if I can maybe open it up, how long it took each technology to reach their 1 millionth user. And it's really amazing how ChatGPT changed the world in the last, few months, right? So Netflix, it took Netflix 3.5 years to reach the 1 million user. Instagram, you all use it, probably 2.5 months, Spotify 1 month, and ChatGPT is 5 days to reach the 1 million users. So that's a game-changing technology, right? So that's a game-changing approach. We're all kind of now figuring out what that means for all of our disciplines. But to me, that's where the domain knowledge is going to be even more important, because we want to make sure that what's being generated, we can evaluate, we can use it the right way rather than treat this as a black box. So I think we're going through another revolution in the AI, and we're all going to figure things out as we go forward. But I still very much believe that, domain knowledge is very important. Domain models are very important as we go through this. And hence, I still think that civil engineering, construction, we are the center of the world. And then these technologies are for all of us to utilize as we go forward. And I'll stop. Maybe I talk too much. So happy to answer questions.
That was a wonderful introduction, Burcu. Thank you so much for that. So I'll follow up with what you started. I think this would be a nice start of our questions. This is a question asked by Joseph Nolan. How would you envision the integration of artificial intelligence impacting the field of civil engineering in the coming years? And what specific applications and advancements do you foresee, and how might they change the traditional practices and decision-making processes in the industry?
Okay, so that's a pretty loaded question, and I'm always hesitant to predict the future. I don't have a digital twin well enough to be able to predict how the AI is going to change the world. Well, first, I'm going to start by saying you are the change agents, right? So whatever I say, it doesn't matter. Whatever you're going to do is going to matter as we look into the future. And hence, you all, in my mind, should have good enough knowledge in this domain to be in the technology part of things too, to be able to make the right changes that we all need and would love to have in our industry. So that's the kind of the caveat. I would say, how would AI change? Well, we are seeing a rapid change with the generative AI. I do think that, nowadays you can create an initial design, you can answer a few, EIT questions, right? Engineering training questions. I heard that the AI, one of these ChatGPT platforms, they fed the questions in and got a passing grade from, not a stellar, but passing grade from that. So what does that mean, right? So to me, which I'm also trying to figure out myself, but to me, it means that maybe some of the more routine calculations, more, simple design approaches, simple scheduling approaches, they might be automated much faster than we thought it would be. But then that in a certain way, it's good, because then that would allow us as engineers, construction managers, project engineers, to bring our creativity and true engineering thinking into the schedules and into the designs that we're going to generate. So I do think that some of the things that we have in our industry will change. The practices will change. Some initial iterations might be generated for us, but that's where I think we're all going to shine as bringing the domain perspective and our innovations into the picture and be able to push things forward. I don't know whether this makes sense.
That's excellent. So we started with the future and forecasting. I'll take us to the past with Philip Hunt's question. And it's important to learn from the past. I think this is a nice way of continuing this discussion. What was a piece of new technology that had the most significant impact on the field, in your opinion?
Well, pick the flavor of the technology. I mean, I think there are many different technologies that had a lot of impact. But to me, the fascinating part, one of the fascinating parts was how fast our industry adopted certain technologies versus the others. And I'll give you from my own experience, right? So when I started, as I said, early 1990s at Stanford, there was BIM, right? We were doing product modeling. And I don't think BIM took off until 2010 or, close to that time. It started taking off in the industry for usage. So that's a long time to adopt the technology. Another example is, late 2010s, I started doing research on drones and, using laser scanners on top of a drone or cameras on top of a drone to do infrastructure condition assessment. So this was a research that we were doing with Robotics Institute, and they were more interested in the autonomous aspect of the drone, and I was interested in, what to do with that data. We thought that we're ahead of the curve, all is great. In a year into our project, we started seeing drones. Granted, they weren't autonomous drones, but we started seeing drones being heavily utilized for inspection, just collecting the data. Again, not automated analysis, but the data was there, and engineers were using it for construction and for infrastructure management. So why was it so fast for a drone adoption versus, so long for a BIM adoption? And I can only speculate, but, to me, those are the interesting differences. I mean, both of them were game changers in certain ways, but drones was faster because, to me, it empowers the engineers to see things that they weren't able to see the other way around, right? So it really makes the data collection much easier and faster for them. Versus BIM required a bunch of people to agree on things, and getting that agreement took a long time. We got to have the new contractual agreements and things like that. So, game changer, all of these are game changer technologies. It's so curious. I'm very curious on, how fast certain technologies get adopted versus the others.
Thank you, Burcu, so much for that answer. So I'm going to move to Hamza Khan's question. Less about the specific technologies, more about the challenges to implement them. So what are some of the major challenges or issues to incorporating AI robotics on construction projects or building facilities management?
Okay, challenges. Well, so again, I'm assuming you're asking about more on the deployment side of things and not so much, the research case studies. And my only experience in that is around the startup that I'm part of. So when I do my research, as I said, I get passionate about the problem and want to solve the problem. So all along, I thought that, starting with a case study and building the research around it and then demonstrating again with multiple studies at the end would lead to an easier adoption of the technology in the industry. What I learned during that startup generation period is that's not the case, because there's a difference between, oh, this technology is cool, to between that and, oh, I'm willing to pay for this technology. So willing to pay is a big impediment, right? Every technology is cool. We'd love to have it, but when do you want to? When does a facility manager, willing to pay for this? And that's typically, when you're solving a major problem for them or relieving their headache. But if you're asking for a complete process change, typically we got a total pushback on that, saying, oh, we can't really change the processes, but how can we incorporate these technologies into our current processes to make it better, to relieve, one of the pains that they might have, either the time that they spend or, having maybe ineffective decisions because they don't have the right tools, etc. So with that in mind, right? So if you are able to do that, then the nature of the technology, whether it's an AI-based technology that got the impediment or not, becomes a little secondary. One of the impediments that people talk a lot about the AI is, I would say, more on the machine learning categories, whether we have enough data to learn. And I think that's changing. I think it's temporary if we don't have the data. I mean, we're seeing that change all the time. And in cases where we don't have the data, digital twins can help, right? So it can generate some simulated data for us. So I understand that it's an impediment, but I'm not seeing it as an impediment that one cannot overcome, as long as the technology that you develop addresses an important issue or a pain in the industry.
Great, thank you. So you talked a little bit about your entrepreneurship experience. So I'll continue with Raha Haji Shashrafi's question. Given your extensive background in both academia and entrepreneurship, could you share some of your insights on how you successfully transitioned from academia to co-founding Lean FM and the challenges and lessons you learned along the way? And how do you see the intersection of academia and startups shaping the future of construction and facility management industry?
Oh, another big question. So all of these are huge questions. We can spend a whole hour talking about them. So my transition from academia, so I never left academia, right? So I'm still, my identity is I'm a faculty member, I'm a department head, and startup is there, and I really enjoy it, but, I didn't leave completely academia to the startup. But my students did, right? So one of my former students who was really passionate about having a startup, he basically shaped his career around it. So he did his PhD. While he was doing his PhD, he was doing a master's in software engineering. And then after PhD, because his PhD was on facility management and we wanted to turn his PhD into a product, he kind of said, okay, forget my PhD. I'm going to go out to the field and be a facility operator for a while. So he worked in the field for 3-4 years to understand the pain and to build the knowledge, experience around facility operations. So it won't be a product that won't be applicable to the field, to the industry. So he was the one who totally made the transition, and his passion drove me to partner with him and co-found this company. It is quite a bit of a journey. It is, it has a lot of ups, lots of downs. It's very rewarding to see some of your ideas that you had in the papers turn into a real product and being used and get feedback on it. And that is, that's to me another way that we as academicians make an impact to the world, and that's very rewarding. But startup is a business, and you got to do fundraising, you got to find the customers, and you want to make sure that everything fits into a good legal system. And those things are both exciting but also challenging to me, right? So it is like sometimes you feel like you're only 1 month away from bankrupt, and then something happens and you're back in action in a really good way. And so, like, for me, it's a challenging. For some others, it's very thrilling, and hence you got to have that notion of being able to work in an uncertain situation if you're going to go into the startup world. I do think we need more startup companies driven by civil engineers and construction background folks in our industry. Sometimes it kills me that some other domain, I'm not going to mention any names, the students from there come up and say, "Oh, I came up with a bridge inspection tool." I'm like, "Really? And did you talk to any civil engineers, or do you have any civil engineers in your company?" And no, we don't need them. We have all the data, we'll figure it out, or we have the sensing, we'll figure it out. And to me, that's pretty sad, because for our domain, there are a lot of very unique challenges, and it's almost like an insult if you don't incorporate the domain's perspective into the product that you're doing. So my call out to you all is be that person and get into the startup and make an impact. To me, most of the innovation, yes, we do innovation in academia, but most of the innovation that is impactful comes from the startups, because those are the ones that see really transformative ideas or products, and that some big technology companies are not, they're not lean enough to do it. So you create it as a startup, and it grows from there. So highly encourage it if you have the appetite for it. It really needs a certain type of personality to thrive in that business. And to me, not everybody could do it. And if you like that kind of, ups and downs and roller coasters and having a big win and then, oh my God, we're about to bankrupt kind of a ride, please do get into the startup. We all need all of you to change our industry.
Great answer. Another one, Burcu, and I cannot agree with you more in terms of integration of or collaboration with the domain experts in the startup realm. I like also learning about the personal experiences of our speakers. So I'll borrow Lemlem Asaye's question to fulfill that need of mine. Could you share a personal career highlight or a challenging project experience where technology played a pivotal role and how it impacted your career trajectory?
Oh boy, career highlight where technology played a pivotal role. If it wasn't technology, I could talk all about, all my students' graduations and all that stuff. But since now you said technology, I think Career highlights that technology played a pivotal role. Well, I mean, the easiest one for me to answer is when, with the startup, when a large customer, hospital facilities started using it, and in the meetings they had this aha moment of, oh yeah, it really works, and I see, all these faults in my system and I can act on it. So it's very, very rewarding in that sense. Other career highlights, which would be way, way early in my career. So first project that I got funding for was a multidisciplinary project, as many of my projects are. So it had, robotics folks, architecture folks, and civil engineering folks. And so the technology development, and that's why I think it's important to have these multiple domains to talk to each other. So we had, some of our robotics folks were generating some optimized scan plan, where to put the laser scanner, and they create this beautiful algorithm that takes about 2 days to crank it out with the technology at that time, with the computing power at that time. And then we went to the job site, and I said, okay, let's deploy this, where to put the scanners. So we went to the job site. Literally everybody's reaction is like, what's all the junk here in the construction site? And I'm like, oh, no, that's not junk. That's the material lay down area. That's the equipment area. None of those were incorporated into the algorithm. So it's a beautiful technology, but unless you marry it with the real setting, it would have been a technology that stayed up in the shelf. But that reaction totally changed our approach on how we do scan planning, and we got into the more, doing on the spot scan planning rather than coming up with the most optimal scan plan that we can't execute at the field. So. That I remember that day very well, because to me, that's the power of technology, but not just the power of technology. You got to understand where you're applying and the constraints around it.
Absolutely. That's great. So I'm going to move us to some career advising around AI and novel technologies. And there are two students who are asking similar questions, so I'm going to combine them. Moin Heravi and Galnush Abdullahzadeh are asking similar flavor questions. Almost all new technologies implemented in the construction industry need deep technical background, knowledge and skills on AI, computer vision, or similar computer science skills. How do you suggest we, construction engineers and researchers, should address and overcome this issue? And what they can do to reinforce their AI skills in the design and construction industries for their future careers?
Okay, another interesting question. All of these questions are awesome. So this is my kind of, well, all of these are my opinions, so I don't need to say it. So I don't know whether it's true for everybody, and I'm sure all of us will have a slightly different opinion on this. So I do see AI as a tool, your calculator, right? So you gotta play, and you need the calculator to do things, and you need AI to do things, right? So you need to, in my mind, there's a need for a good understanding to be able to use the tool in the most, impactful way, most useful way on the decisions that you're doing. If you're going to come up with a new tool, right, a new AI algorithm, certainly, with programming background, etc., you could do that. But at the same time, I want to highlight that, to me, the power comes from collaboration than an individual, right? So I'm of the mind that one of my instructors at Stanford told this to me, and I'm very respectful for this statement, that I use that as my view of the world too. Like he said, you know, instead of being a second-class computer scientist, work with the top computer scientists, but be a first-class civil engineer, right? So I've always used that. I work with the top, you know, computer scientists, architects, other top civil engineers. That's where you can find some interesting new approaches to develop together instead of trying to learn anything and everything about computer vision, because that's a whole other field, right? We can't learn anything and everything. I'd rather learn through them and advance that field together with advancing my field. But if I'm going out to the world, I need AI, just like you would need calculators. So I need to have a basic understanding of what AI, minimum basic understanding, but feel comfortable using some techniques so that I can incorporate it into the world. So I don't know whether I'm making sense here, but all I'm saying is that you're going to have some understanding to use the tool and to be able to talk to the right people and bring the right people in. But I never want to pretend, and I am not a great computer vision algorithm person, but I collaborate with the best ones. So we develop together impactful algorithms, new approaches and algorithms.
So I hear polishing our communication collaboration skills is as important as learning some of these cutting edge technologies.
That is true. And you also need to learn the language of AI if you're going to collaborate with the deep thinkers in that space.
Thank you. I have a couple questions, all again within the same flavor. So I can't help myself ask this question, and I can predict your answer, but I'll ask anyway. John Chapa is asking, to what extent will robots be able to replace laborers? And then Joseph Rosso is asking, will construction be replaced by AI?
I am, again, my bias will come. I don't think this is an industry that is easily replaceable, which is an awesome thing. Some industries might be easily replaceable, but our work is craftsman work, and you gotta, there are certain aspects. I do think that there will be certain aspects that will be replaced by robots and AI tools, but not every aspect. And because the nature of what we do, unless we want box buildings and build it over and over again in the same way, you know, then yes, we might be able to get replaced soon, but that's never going to happen. And even more now, we need more innovative thinking with everything that's going on, you know, climate change, urbanization, you know, all the stressors around civil engineering infrastructure requires us to think even more creatively and more innovatively. And when you have that situation, AI can be creative, but not that creative. And robots are not quite there yet either.
Thank you, Burcu. Continuing along the questions related to regulations, compliance with laws, potential risk mitigation. So Gabe Fossum has this question. They say they're interested in the ways BIM VDC can be incorporated and implemented with the use of artificial intelligence tool. And they're asking regarding the challenges when it comes to legal aspects of this. They're interested in that. From compliance with laws and potential risk mitigation to owners and general contractors, estimators, and such. Do you believe that there will be regulations that might limit the power of AI? So I combined Jacob Burdet's questions with Gabe's question.
Oh boy. So litigation is certainly an important aspect that we, you know, it's certainly an important aspect that we consider as we do things. having said that, and in certain ways, sometimes it becomes limiting. Certain ways, legal system and policies and contracts sometimes follow the technology afterwards. I wish it was done jointly and we could utilize the technology effectively, but sometimes it's kind of a pullback. To me, so I'll give you two answers, and it's gonna maybe contradict a little bit. To me, some of these advancements are so out of the background now, like you can't shut down ChatGPT immediately at this point, right? Everybody is using, it's part of our life. We expect that the students will use it, we all use it, we kind of know that it's, it has its force on its own. And some of these technologies are already there, and almost the legal system is trying to catch up with it. Having said that, I also had a quote. Let me try to read. I don't have my glasses on. So when this whole thing was happening over the spring, all of these companies, some major companies like Amazons of the world, they came together and wrote something saying that stop AI, right? So it says mitigating the risk of extinction from AI should be a global priority alongside other societal scale risks such as pandemics and nuclear war. So AI equals the pandemic and nuclear war in certain ways in the creators of AI's minds. So, I'm giving it two different answers. It's out there and it has its life of its own, but at the same time, a lot of people say that we gotta figure things out first, because the worst thing we want to do is with the AI is automate something that is unethical, doesn't do the privacy, doesn't think about privacy, come up with wrong answers, bias, lots of biases that come with AI because the data sometimes is being collected is biased. So if we got to stop so that we can kind of get the legal system up fast enough and then co-develop maybe together is the plea out there. I can't predict where it's gonna land in terms of the legal ramifications as well as the technology development and how we're gonna kind of marry those together. But it's really important that we get things right and marry them, and both of them develop almost as fast as each other rather than one is lagging behind.
Thank you. The time passes really quickly.
Yeah.
I'll wrap up with Asma Khalil's question. I think it's a great one to end our session. As we look ahead to a future where technology is increasingly integrated in every facet of design and construction, how can the industry ensure that sustainability, environment, and environmental responsibility remain at the forefront of decision-making? And what role can emerging technologies play in achieving these goals?
Yeah. Very good question. Well, if the industry doesn't make sustainability as a priority, it will never happen, regardless of the technology, right? So it's in the processes, it's in everything that we do. So to me, technology will not impede the development of, making sustainable decisions. It will enhance it as long as people value it, and which I hope we all do for the sake of this planet. But, I'm not seeing as technology as a way that we do not, like, that won't lead to an end goal. And to me, it's an enabler to the end goal, as long as we want to make sure, we promote the values in our industry correctly. The problem or the opportunity, so the problem with the technology is that sometimes, and especially AI, black box, data-driven things, because it relies on the data, sometimes it generates answers that we do not know that it's biased, because we don't have a good understanding of the data and we don't know how all these neural network is working, right? So it's not very transparent and it's not always very explainable. Then we fall into the issue of, ethical issues around biases it generates. So for me, the way I see it, if I turn that negative into a positive, I see that in certain ways, our discipline is a little behind in this AI stuff, right? So we see autonomous cars, but we don't see autonomous infrastructure, buildings. It's not there yet. So we're getting there. So then it's a good opportunity for us, right? You're asking the right question, is that we start right. We learn from other industries' mistakes in certain ways on the development of this technology. And when we started with the mindset of we want to create a responsible AI that will be privacy preserving, it will be ethical, it won't have biases, and it will serve to the common good, sustainability, and equity and other aspects. And if we start right, then we're going to jumpstart many other industries who are already incorporating AI and facing these issues. And now they are trying to fix their approaches versus us, we could do it right the first time.
Wow, that was inspirational.
That's how I feel.
Okay, I don't know how to end the session after those remarks. Burcu, that was excellent. Thank you so much. I enjoyed it very much. I'm sure our students also did. It was special for me because you're a friend and a respected colleague and a role model. Thank you so much for spending your time your afternoon or night, almost evening with
Evening.
us. Yes. So we have a winner, Mariana Merle from the University of Texas, San Antonio is today's winner for our $500 scholarship. So before we say goodnight, I would like to thank our sponsors, the University of Florida Rinker School of Construction, Arizona State University Del Webb School of Construction, and the University of Colorado Boulder Construction Engineering and Management. Susan and I look forward to seeing you at our next webinar on October 17th. Please come back. And Burcu, thank you again. Have a wonderful week.
Thank you for the opportunity. It was nice to see all the participant list here and awesome questions. And let's keep the conversation going.
Thank you. Have a good night.